won't believe what happened to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson on the day of his very first flight in his brand new private jet. What started as a celebration quickly turned into something shocking and completely unforgettable. Stay tuned, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below letting us know where you're watching from. Your support means everything. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson stood on the balcony of his luxurious mansion, overlooking the sprawling city skyline bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun. The skyscrapers were painted in hues of orange and crimson, a breathtaking view that had always symbolized success to him. But tonight, that view did little to calm the restless energy stirring inside him. His thoughts were elsewhere. For years, Dwayne had fought his way to the top, climbing from a childhood of struggle to becoming one of the most recognizable figures in Hollywood. He had seen it all. Every setback, every doubt, every door slammed in his face had only fueled his determination. Now, at the height of success, he had everything: money, fame, influence, but something still felt incomplete. A voice in the back of his mind kept whispering that there was more, that he hadn't reached the peak just yet. His phone buzzed, snapping him from his thoughts. Glancing down, he saw the name of his longtime business advisor and friend, Mark. He answered with a calm but curious tone. "Hey Mark, what's up?" "You tell me, big guy." Mark's voice crackled through the line, lighthearted yet knowing. "I can tell when something's on your mind." Dwayne chuckled, rubbing the back of his head. "Yeah, man, just thinking about what's next." Mark paused. "What's next?" "You've done movies, wrestling, TV, tequila, fitness. What could possibly be next?" Dwayne's voice grew serious. "Something different. Something with purpose." Mark was quiet for a moment before responding, his tone softer now. "All right, D, talk to me. What's on your mind?" Dwayne exhaled deeply, his gaze returning to the city below. "A jet." Mark's confusion was clear. "Like, a private jet for yourself?" "Not just for me," Dwayne said, turning away from the view and pacing through his living room. "Something bigger. I've spent years flying across the country, visiting communities, talking to kids, showing up for charity events, but always on someone else's schedule. I hate that. I want to be able to move on my own terms. No waiting, no delays, just go." Mark hummed thoughtfully. "So, you're buying a jet to make your life easier?" Dwayne shook his head. "Not just easier, more impactful. Imagine being able to reach the places no one goes. Remote towns, schools where kids have never seen someone like me walk in and tell them their dreams aren't too big. I want to take control of where I go and when. No limitations." There was a long pause before Mark let out a low whistle. "Man, this sounds bigger than just buying a jet. This sounds like a mission." "It is," Dwayne said, his jaw set with determination. "It's not about luxury. It's about impact. It's about showing people what's possible when you stop letting others decide your limits." Mark laughed. "You sure know how to make a business pitch, brother. So, what's the plan?" "Simple," Dwayne said. "We find the right jet. We design it to do everything I need, sure, comfort, but also capacity. I want to be able to take my team, my crew, maybe even a few guests along for the ride. No unnecessary luxury, just power, just purpose." Mark's voice turned serious. "You know people are gonna talk, right? They're gonna say you're flaunting wealth, living large." "Let them talk," Dwayne said, his voice firm. "They can say whatever they want. This jet isn't a trophy. It's a tool. And once they see what I do with it, they'll understand." Mark chuckled. "Man, you're really set on this, huh?" "More than ever," Dwayne replied. "This isn't about me, Mark. It's about something bigger. It's about proving that we can dream bigger, do bigger, and be bigger. I'm done waiting for permission. I'm taking off." Mark exhaled, now fully on board. "All right, let's make it happen." I'll start pulling some options and get you looking at jets by next week. Good, Dwayne said. But one more thing, I want this jet to be a symbol. A symbol? For what? Dwayne's eyes locked onto an old framed Polaroid sitting on the counter, a photo of himself as a young boy, scrawny, in an oversized t-shirt, gripping a football like it was his whole world. He remembered that kid. He remembered what it felt like to dream big, even when the world told him he was too small. For the kids who think they're not enough, he said. For the people who've been told no too many times. I'm going to show them what it looks like to take control of their own destiny. Mark's voice was steady. Say less. I'm on it. As the call ended, Dwayne stood still, staring at that photo. This wasn't just about a plane. It was about something much bigger. You won't believe what happened to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson on the day of his very first flight in his brand new private jet. What started as a moment of triumph quickly turned into something shocking, something no one saw coming. Stay tuned, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below letting us know where you're watching from. Your support means everything. Dwayne Johnson had spent weeks making this dream a reality. Research, negotiations, endless visits to private hangars, it was a whirlwind. But he wasn't looking for just any jet. He needed the jet. One that could take him to remote locations, carry his crew, and be a space where real ideas and real impact could be born. And finally, after hours of deliberation, he found it. Sleek, powerful, efficient. The deal was done. The papers were signed. The jet was his. The first time he stepped aboard, it felt surreal. The polished wood, the leather seats, the panoramic windows, it was all pristine. But it wasn't the luxury that moved him. It was the possibility. He could already see it, flying to communities in need, stepping out to meet kids, parents, and teachers who never thought they'd see someone like him walk through their doors. This was bigger than just owning a jet. This was the start of something more. The night before his first flight, Dwayne sat in his home, quietly reflecting. His assistant, Laura, walked in, tablet in hand, already on top of the details. You're all set for tomorrow, boss, she said with a grin. First flight. How's it feel? Dwayne leaned back, staring at the ceiling for a moment before replying. Like I'm about to make history. Laura smirked. I'll be right there with you every step of the way. This is going to be big. I can feel it. Bigger than big, Dwayne nodded. I just hope the world's ready for it. The next morning, everything was perfect. The sun was bright, the air crisp, and the jet stood on the tarmac, gleaming under the golden morning light like a beacon of change. Dwayne's SUV pulled up, and as he stepped out, he felt it, that electricity in the air. A new beginning. A new chapter. With each step toward the jet, he took in the sight of the flight crew preparing for takeoff. They turned as he approached, their faces lighting up. They knew they were part of something special. But just as he was about to reach the stairs, a sharp voice cut through the morning air. Hey, you! Hold it right there. Dwayne stopped in his tracks, his brow furrowing. He turned to see a tall, broad-shouldered security guard striding toward him, suspicion written all over his face. Dwayne's posture remained calm, but his eyes darkened slightly. Can I help you? The guard crossed his arms, eyeing him up and down. Yeah, you can. Show me some ID. Dwayne reached into his wallet, pulling out his identification and the official ownership documents for the jet. He handed them over without a word. The guard barely glanced at them before letting out a low chuckle, shaking his head. Funny, he muttered, holding up the paperwork. How does a guy like you afford something like this? A slow, heavy silence fell between them. Dwayne's jaw tightened. His fists clenched at his sides. But his voice? Deadly calm. Hard work, he said, his eyes locked onto the guards. And if you don't step aside, you're about to see just how hard I can work. The morning sun reflected off the sleek silver jet behind him, its engines humming with quiet potential. The scent of fresh dew and aviation fuel lingered in the air. This was supposed to be a day of victory, a day to mark the first flight of a dream brought to life. But fate had other plans. A black SUV had just pulled up at the edge of the tarmac, its tires crunching softly against the gravel. The door swung open, and out stepped Dwayne, dressed in a tailored navy blue blazer over a crisp white t-shirt, a perfect balance of sharp style and effortless confidence. His polished leather shoes tapped lightly against the pavement as he approached the aircraft with slow, deliberate strides. He glanced up at the jet, a small grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. This wasn't just a luxury. This was a tool. A means to change lives. Laura stepped out behind him, balancing a tablet in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. She caught up quickly, her eyes scanning over the schedule. "All set, boss," she said. "Crew's ready. Pre-check is complete. Weather's clear. First stop, Memphis. Then we hit the 2 schools before the community event." "Perfect," Dwayne replied, still looking at the jet. "This is going to be big, Laura." She smiled. "That's the only way you do things, Rock." As they walked toward the stairs, everything was running like clockwork. Mechanics checked the landing gear. Ground staff fueled the plane. The pilot stood at the base of the steps, offering a respectful nod. And then, "Hey, you! Hold it right there." The sharp voice rang out like a gunshot through the crisp morning air. Dwayne stopped mid-stride. His expression hardened. And when he turned toward the source, everything changed. Faced for a long moment before giving a slow nod. "Appreciate it," he said, his voice steady but edged with something unshakable, something unbreakable. He turned back toward the jet, but just before stepping onto the stairs, he stopped. He glanced at the security guard, the man who had spent the last 20 minutes trying to shrink him, trying to tell him he didn't belong. Dwayne took a slow step forward, closing the space between them just enough for the man to feel the weight of his presence. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You wanted to know how I afforded this jet," he said, his eyes locked onto the guards. "With every day I got up before the sun. With every rep in the gym when nobody was watching. With every failure I refused to let break me. With every time someone like you told me I wasn't supposed to make it." The guard's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Dwayne nodded slowly. "So next time you see someone like me standing where you think they don't belong, you might want to think twice before you decide they don't." Then, without waiting for a response, he turned and climbed the stairs to his jet. Laura was right behind him, shaking her head as she muttered, "Unbelievable." Dwayne just exhaled as he stepped into the cabin, the door closing behind them. As the engines roared to life, he settled into his seat, staring out the window as the jet began to roll down the runway. This was why he worked the way he did. Why he never let up. Because no matter how much success, no matter how many milestones, there would always be people who needed proof. And Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? He didn't give them proof. He gave them a lesson. The wheels lifted off the ground, the jet soaring into the sky, just like he always had. Filled the cabin with a warm golden light, but Dwayne barely noticed. His mind was locked in place, replaying the moment over and over. He wasn't looking for sympathy. He wasn't looking for an apology. He was looking for change. Laura sat across from him, watching him carefully. She could already see where this was headed. This wasn't going to be just another moment that passed. This was going to be a moment that mattered. "All right," she finally said, sitting up straighter. "So what's next?" Dwayne exhaled, his fingers tapping lightly against the leather armrest. "Now," he said, his voice steady, full of quiet power. "Now we make noise." The video went live within the hour. The response? Explosive. In minutes, it was being shared across every platform. News outlets picked it up. Celebrities weighed in. People from all walks of life flooded the comments, some in outrage, some in solidarity, and of course, some trying to dismiss it. But the message was already out there. It wasn't about a jet. It wasn't about a single security guard. It wasn't even about Dwayne Johnson. It was about a reality that too many people had lived through. A reality that, even at the highest levels of success, still found a way to remind you that some people will never see you as belonging. Dwayne didn't care about the noise. He didn't care about the critics. He cared about the kids sitting at home, watching the video, seeing themselves in his story. He cared about the message reaching the people it needed to reach. Because if his story could be the push someone else needed to stop waiting for permission and start taking what was theirs, then the whole fight was worth it. The jet sliced through the sky, heading toward its destination. And so was Dwayne. It with a playful glint in his eye. Looks like it's been on some serious adventures. Mia hesitated, then managed a small, shy smile. His name is Benny, she whispered. Dwayne's grin widened. Benny, huh? Well, I think Benny's about to go on his biggest adventure yet. You ready to fly, Captain Mia? Her nod was a little stronger this time. Dwayne extended his fist, and after a brief pause, Mia bumped it with her tiny hand. That's what I'm talking about, he said, standing up and looking at her mother. Anything you need, just say the word, he told her, his voice steady with reassurance. She exhaled, a mixture of exhaustion and relief crossing her face. I can't thank you enough. I don't even have the words. You don't need words, Dwayne replied simply. You just need to get on that jet, sit back, and let us handle the rest. He turned and gestured toward the stairs, stepping aside as Mia and her mother walked up, guided by the flight crew. As they disappeared into the cabin, Dwayne took a deep breath and looked out at the horizon. The cameras were rolling somewhere in the distance, reporters were probably drafting headlines at that very moment, and social media was still buzzing about what had happened just a day before. But none of that mattered. This was what mattered. A little girl getting the care she needed. A mother getting to breathe a little easier. A mission that was bigger than him, bigger than any controversy or headline. Laura stepped up beside him, her tablet in one hand, her eyes watching the jet as its engines powered up. First mission is officially underway, she said. Dwayne nodded, hands still in his pockets. And just the first of many. He took one last look at the world behind him, the cameras, the past, the doubt, the small-minded voices trying to keep him in a box. Then he turned, climbed the stairs, and stepped into the jet. The doors sealed. The wheels lifted. And the rock? He wasn't just flying anymore. He was soaring. It out and glanced at the screen. Another flood of messages, more support, more people wanting to help, more people paying attention. Laura stepped beside him, reading over his shoulder. The governor just reached out. Wants to talk about potential partnerships. Dwayne exhaled, sliding the phone back into his pocket. Good, he said, his eyes still on the ambulance as it disappeared into the distance. Because we're just getting started. She smirked. I figured you'd say that. Dwayne turned back to the jet, running a hand over the smooth metal of the doorframe before stepping inside. Today, one little girl got what she needed. But tomorrow? Tomorrow, it would be someone else. And the day after that, someone else. Because this wasn't about one flight. This was about a movement. And Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? He wasn't stopping until the world understood exactly what that meant. Worldwide. Messages of support flooded in. Celebrities, athletes, and even Fortune 500 CEOs reached out, offering resources, partnerships, and funding. But more importantly, people stepped up. Pilots volunteered their time. Hospitals reached out, wanting to be part of the network. Teachers, parents, and community leaders shared stories of families in desperate need of help, families who, until now, had nowhere to turn. Dwayne sat back in his chair, phone in hand, reading through the overwhelming response. His jaw clenched, not from frustration, but from purpose. Laura was across from him, watching the momentum unfold in real time on her tablet. "This is getting big," she muttered, shaking her head in disbelief. "And fast." Dwayne exhaled, locking his phone and setting it down. "Good," he said. "That means we're doing something right." She glanced up at him. "You sure you're ready for this? This isn't just another project. This is huge." Dwayne leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. His eyes were sharp, unwavering. "Laura, my whole life, I've had to be ready for the next challenge. I didn't come this far just to talk about change. We're making it happen." She smirked. "All right, boss. Let's get to work." The first official Wings of Hope missions were set in motion within a week. A young boy in Texas needing emergency treatment across the country? Done. A family displaced by a wildfire in California needing transport to a safe shelter? Handled. A school in a struggling community looking for inspiration? Dwayne himself showed up. And every time, cameras were rolling, not for clout, not for image, but to show proof. Proof that action speaks louder than words. Proof that change doesn't wait for permission. Soon, major corporations were offering sponsorships. Airlines and aviation companies pledged resources. Even government officials took notice, wanting to collaborate. And through it all, Dwayne never slowed down. Because every time he looked out the window of that jet, soaring thousands of feet above the world, he wasn't thinking about his success. He was thinking about the ground. The people still waiting. And as long as there was work to do, the rock wasn't landing anytime soon. To the crew, her voice cutting through the noise of the tarmac. The team sprang into action, forklifts rolling forward, workers moving with practiced efficiency. Every box, every crate was a lifeline, each one carrying something that could mean the difference between survival and suffering. Dwayne stood at the edge of it all, his hands still in his pockets, watching. He wasn't just overseeing the operation, he was feeling it. The weight of it. The urgency. The responsibility. Laura stepped up beside him, tablet in hand, scanning the logistics. "ETA on departure?" he asked without looking away from the trucks. 30 minutes, max," she replied. "Weather's holding up, no delays expected. Community leaders on the ground are ready to receive. Everything's set." Dwayne nodded, his jaw tight. "Good. Let's move." Within minutes, the last crate was loaded, secured, and double-checked. The flight crew ran their final checks, and the engines powered up, filling the air with a low, steady hum. As Dwayne made his way toward the jet, a voice called out behind him. "Excuse me, Mr. Johnson." He turned to see a young woman approaching, breathless, a badge hanging from a lanyard around her neck, an airport staff member. I just wanted to say thank you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "My family is from one of the towns you're flying to. My grandmother is still there. No power, no clean water. You don't know what this means to us." Dwayne looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't just thanking him, she was holding back tears, carrying the weight of people she loved. He stepped forward, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, and said, "You tell your grandma help is on the way." She nodded quickly, pressing a hand over her mouth as emotion took over. Dwayne gave her a final nod before stepping onto the jet. Inside, he took his seat near the front, exhaling slowly. Laura slid into the seat across from him, watching as he stared out the window, deep in thought. "You good?" she asked. Dwayne didn't answer right away. He watched as the ground crew gave the final clearances, as the last of the straps were checked, as the jet prepared to take off. Then he finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "No," he said. "Not until we land." The jet rumbled forward, picking up speed, and within moments, it lifted off, soaring into the sky. Another mission underway. Another community waiting. And The Rock? He wasn't just delivering aid. He was delivering hope. And he wasn't stopping anytime soon. Wings of Hope wasn't just a name anymore, it was a movement. A promise. And it had only just begun. But what a journey it had already been. Dwayne Johnson stood at the top of the jet stairs, the evening air wrapping around him, carrying the distant sounds of voices, laughter, and the rustling of supply crates being stacked for storage. Below, the last remnants of the mission played out, volunteers shaking hands, embracing, offering tired but grateful smiles. Families clutched newly received blankets and food, children held onto bottles of fresh water as if they were treasures. Hope had finally arrived. For Dwayne, it was never about the cargo, the logistics, or even the headlines. It was about people. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Because this moment wasn't about him. It was about Mia, the little girl whose mother had once thought she might never make it to the hospital in time. Now, she had a future. A chance. It was about Mick, the teenager who had once believed his dreams were too big until someone showed him that the sky wasn't a ceiling, but an invitation. It was about Ezra, the boy who clutched his signed notebook like it held the blueprint to his destiny. 3 people. 3 lives. 3 reasons to keep going. Laura stepped up beside him, arms folded, her gaze following his. The sky had darkened, the deep blue stretching endlessly above them, the first stars flickering into existence like distant promises. "Think it's enough?" she asked quietly, her voice barely louder than the breeze. Dwayne's eyes didn't leave the horizon. He stood still, his silhouette outlined by the soft glow of the cabin lights, his thoughts stretching far beyond what was in front of him. He shook his head. "It's never enough. That's why we keep going." Laura exhaled, a small, knowing smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Yeah," she murmured. "We keep going." Behind them, the jet's engines roared to life, a powerful, steady hum vibrating through the metal beneath their feet. The sound wasn't just machinery, it was momentum. Purpose. A heartbeat that refused to stop. Dwayne took one last look at the world below, the people, the hands that had once reached for help now working together to rebuild. Then, without another word, he turned and stepped inside. The door sealed. The cabin lights flickered as the jet began to roll forward, slow at first, then faster, the momentum carrying it down the runway. The ground shook beneath it. Faster. Higher. Until the wheels lifted off, and Wings of Hope soared once more. But this was just the beginning. If you thought this was powerful, just wait. Dwayne Johnson's story is far from over, and what's coming next will be even bigger. Make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and share this video with your friends. Your support helps bring these stories to life. Speech Balloon, drop a comment below, we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? What inspired you most? Rocket, see you in the next one.